Hello, I'm Greg EG.IdrA, and this is a Razer Academy replay analysis. Today we'll be looking at a generic Muta ZvZ build order in a game versus Pulse Kane.
So here we have me, EG.IdrA, as the green Zerg in the top left, and here is Pulse Kane as the pink Zerg in the bottom right. And this game will be a demonstration of more passive Muta versus Muta play, and also a demonstration of the most efficient 2-base Muta build for ZvZ that's currently in play. This is a pretty safe generic build. There are some things you have to watch out for. Roach Bane buffs, of course, are quite powerful. They do have to be accounted for. However, as long as you scout properly and adapt to anything you see, you can deal with pretty much anything with this opening, and it is the best combination of safe and economical and fast Muta tech that we have found currently. And Muta vs. Muta is the current go-to style in ZvZ. Muta's got a number of buffs going into Heart of the Swarm. Their movement speed got a pretty significant increase, and their health regeneration also got a pretty big buff. But the bigger thing is that Infestors actually got nerfed quite heavily. They now are projectile for fungal, which means that it's obviously much harder to catch Mutas in the fungal. And all the Hydras did get buffed. Hydras are still hard countered by Banelings, so you can't really depend on those as a hard counter to Mutas. So Mutas basically just definitely the way to go. If your opponent does go any kind of ground style, you can just use the Mutas for map control, get a superior economy, and then just go attack and kill them. Or if they go Hydras, then Mutaling Baneling wins an army, your first army fights. So, going into ZvZs, your goal should either be to cheese or to go Muta, 9 times out of 10. There are some maps where there are other options where it's very easy to get fast 3 bases. Then you can actually go Hydra plus Infestor, which can work against Mutas, but even then, it's still a little bit iffy. In this game, we see that I did open 15 hatch first. 15 hatch or 15 pool are both pretty similar economically. 15 hatch is a slight advantage, so it's just a drone or two, and it can be compensated for just by better decision making by playing a little bit greedier, getting your spine crawler later. Overall, it's not particularly relevant. It is an advantage, and you would rather be the 15 player, but you don't have to worry about that within the overall scope of the build. It's just a minor low technicality. In this game, I also went 16 pool after and then 17 gas. That is my normal build for 15 hatchery, but again, those numbers are pretty variable. You can adjust them according to what you feel comfortable with. Also, the map, for instance, on Daybreak, very long rush distance, you can be greedier, you can get your gas and pool later. But on a map like for instance, Cloud Kingdom is quite a bit shorter rush distance. You want to open up a little bit safer. And here we see that Kane did actually open 15 pool, getting his hatch a little bit later than mine. And again, that is where the slight economic advantage comes in. But from here on out, it's going to be very similar. Everyone's just droning up. You're getting your upgrades in order of gas availability. You get Speedling as soon as you have 100 gas. You get your Baneling Nest as soon as you have your next 50. And then you're heading for Lair as soon as you have 100 gas. And as I said, this is kind of a build order guide. So as soon as you get that 100 gas, you're going to put down your Lair, and you're going to get your second and third gases. We'll see that coming up in a minute or two here. But up until then, you're just kind of building up your drones. Here, I am getting a pair of Scouting Zerglings. Pardon me, he made a pair of Scouting Zerglings, and I made my pair of Zerglings to fend them off, and I will then go in and try and scout. If you do want to scout with Zerglings, there's basically 2 timings early on in ZvZ in which to do so. You can either do it pretty much immediately before their queens are really out in order to block the ramp, or you can do it as soon as you have Speedling, at which point if you actually get in their base, you're much more likely to get in their base, as you can run through Spine Crawlers and queens much quicker, and then once you get in, you'll actually have the speed to run around and see what's happening. So here we see that the little advantage is kicking in for me. I get my Baneling Nest slightly earlier than he does, if you look at the production tab. And also another thing to note, he's not actually putting his Baneling Nest out in front of his choke. I am here. That's to provide a little bit of a building wall that makes it a bit harder for Banelings and Zerglings to actually get surface area on your Spine Crawler should your opponent choose to attack. And here he did have a nice wall in his ramp. However, I ran around, got my Zerglings in his man. I'm going to see that he's going for a very normal opening, check his Baneling Nest timing, and also check his gas, see how much he's mined and how early he got that. If he got it much earlier than you, that means that you have to watch out for a Baneling timing. However, in this game, I see he has not. So I'm just going to go ahead and put down those second and third gases and start up my Lair. Generally, you'll get your Lair and your second and third gases at the exact same time, and you can take your fourth maybe 10 to 20 seconds later. However, if we look down at Kane's main on the minimap, we see that he has actually gotten his fourth gas immediately. As a slightly greedier build, you are taking a bit of a hit to your mineral income. Should your opponent do some kind of early all-in, then you might be in trouble, as you need more mineral income to put up the Spine Crawlers to potentially get the Zerglings or Roaches or whatever you need to defend. However, in Muta vs. Muta games, that fast fourth gas is definitely a bit of an advantage, as gas income is what controls your Muta count. here, everyone's just droning up. We've both scouted each other's mains, so we know that there's no potential for early aggression. So at this point, we're both just trying to max out our or saturate both of our mineral lines. I tend to get up a little bit over 16. 16 workers per mineral line is maximum efficient saturation. However, I like to get up to 17 or 18, as you will be putting down spore crawlers, spine crawlers, occasionally replacing tech buildings, or losing a drone to Zergling harass at points in the game. So I like to have a couple of extra to spare. And in the engagements coming up, everything will be decided by Zergling versus Baneling, which means that a larva here and there is not particularly relevant, as Banelings, everything's going to come down to the Baneling hits, and one good Baneling hit can easily compensate for 4 to 6 less Zerglings. So I think it's well worthwhile to get those extra few drones out. Another thing you'll see here is that I'm actually going to move my spine crawler forward. That's a very important point, because what happens at this point in the game is both players put down their third base, and then both players start their pure Zergling production, as we see on the production tab. Those Zerglings are either going to be used to defend your third base or to put pressure on your opponent's third, just depending on who decides to be the aggressor. Here we see the Kane is morphing a bunch of Banelings out in front. He has decided to be the aggressor. I have chosen the defensive role, putting down the spine crawler. I feel this is the better option, as there's always a bit of a defender's advantage, particularly when you can put a spine crawler in front of both your natural and your third base. In this case, it makes it much easier to defend. We see it taking out Banelings. Unfortunately there I miscontrolled. I did not target the Baneling with my spine crawler. Pretty bad mistake by me there. I could have held this off much more easily had I done that. But even so, we will see that I have a pretty big drone advantage, as I did produce those drones, and that is what the defender's advantage is. We see I'm up 53 to 44 harvesters. Defender's advantage allows you to get out those extra drones, make your units a little bit later as they are more readily available, and when you put that spine crawler down there, then you can defend more efficiently as well, so you need even less units. And here we see that he thought he had an opening, so he's making 10 more Zerglings. However, my Mutalisks are almost out, and that will, of course, put an end to his Zergling attacks. And we see I still have about an 8 harvester lead, which in ZvZ is a very, very significant advantage, because you run at such low economies that that many workers is actually a pretty big percentage of your income. We see he has not taken his 5th and 6th gases yet. I already have my 5th up and my 6th is on the way. And like I said earlier, gas income is everything in ZvZ. So this will lead to me having a 1 or 2 muted advantage right from the start. And again, as small as that sounds, that's actually a very, very big deal in ZvZ, because in muta versus muta, muta versus muta battles, little advantages like that snowball. As you kill the first muta a little bit more efficiently, then you end up with a few more, or like your advantage continues to grow as more mutas die, because you will kill them faster and faster and faster than your opponent will. So even a small count, or a small advantage in Mutalisk count, can be a very big difference in the end result of the battle. At this point, we have both stabilized. We see that I'm putting down spore crawlers at my third base and my main. That's because at this point in ZvZ, it's very hard to maintain any kind of map vision. Mutas are so fast, and obviously nothing can catch them, short of being caught out of position by your opponent's muta pack, that it's very difficult to actually keep much scouting out on the map without actually just wasting units and losing overlords and Zerglings constantly. So I feel it's much better to have those spores up to stop random muta attacks. It's just very, very easy for either player, really, to just fly into a location with his mutas, pick off a couple of drones or an extractor or whatnot, and get a pretty significant advantage. As I said, any kind of gas income disruption in ZvZ can be game-ending. So it's very easy to just fly in and do that damage. Very difficult for the defender to actually defend efficiently. And if the mutas do fly in, do that damage, and then fly out immediately, you can't really punish them for that. You don't get anything out of it as the defender. So putting up those spore crawlers is well worth it, especially as spore crawlers got a buff against bio. They do significantly more damage to mutas right now. And at this point, the game is mostly a battle over map control. You're just trying to get more vision than your opponent so you can pick the battle better, or so you can counterattack or harass better. Like if his mutaflock is out of position, I'm aware of that, I can send my Zerglings around to try and do some counterattack damage, take out some drones or a gas or whatnot. A gas is always going to be your target if you're doing small economic damage. If you can only do a little bit, focus on the gas. The minerals are never going to be a limiting factor on the mutas, and that is, of course, the game-deciding portion of the game. If we look at the production tab, we're both getting +1 attack now. Always open up with +1 carapace, as that takes off one. Every Mutalisk attack bounces 3 times, and the carapace upgrade actually takes off 1 damage from each bounce, or 2 or 3, depending on the level of the upgrade. And so that is obviously much more effective than the attack, which only does a % damage. I'm not sure the exact numbers, but it's not as much as 1 per bounce. However, I do get +1 attack instead of +2 carapaces. I feel +2 carapaces is too much gas at that point in the game. And so thus far, this has been a very passive ZvZ. There's two real types of ZvZs, either passive or very aggressive and fast pace. Defensive passive like this often happens when both players are pretty equal and no one really wants to risk their advantage by being aggressive. And then aggressive ZvZs happen when one player is down and they have to try and do split Zergling and Muta Harass, try and catch their opponent off guard to do some damage to catch up. And so here, in defensive ZvZs, the best way to gain an advantage is actually to take a fourth base then, because then you're forcing your opponent to attack you. Your mutas will be out a little bit faster. You have that defender's advantage going for you. Maybe you'll have some static defense, or your queens can join in the muta versus muta fight, and that is what it takes to actually win in this kind of game. So here we see I took my fourth a lot earlier than his, and I did have my fifth and sixth gas a little bit faster. So my muta count should be slightly superior. We also both have 1-1 upgrades right now. Whenever an upgrade finishes, that's often a timing. However, since we both have 1-1, it's an equal battle in terms of that. And if we look at the mutas, we see that I do have a 2 muta advantage going into the battle, and we'll see how that actually affects the outcome. Even though he has Zerglings under it, tanking the hits from the mutas, the fact that I had more mutas and the fact that I have more mutas joining the fight more quickly with that defender's advantage, we see it's now 17-4, and that forces him to pull back. So I started out with a couple of muta advantage and with a 4 muta advantage, and I also have my fourth base finished, whereas his is not. And whenever you win a battle and have an economic advantage, whenever your expansion up as well, you should immediately put down static defenses. That Spore Crawler we saw. The Spore Crawler, or the only way to really earn back an advantage in ZvZ is to do this kind of harass that he's trying to do right now. You're not going to win a battle from behind. There is no control you can do that can make a muta versus muta battle turn your favor when you are down in the muta count. So you kind of just have to split it up and make your opponent make bad decisions, defend improperly, or be caught out of position or something like that. So in putting up that static defense, you really limit that, because static defense is so efficient and effective in ZvZ. Zerglings versus spine crawlers, they just can't get the surface area for many of them to actually attack and do a decent amount of damage to the spine crawler. And spore crawlers do a ton of damage to mutas with the current buff. And so here we see that he has actually done quite a bit of damage with that harass. However, I know I have a gigantic muta advantage. Well, we see it is actually only 5-6, but again, that's more than enough to win a ZvZ muta battle. So I have a big advantage, and he has done quite a bit of economic damage, so I'm feeling a little bit of pressure. I know I have to go and push my advantage. When you have that army versus army advantage, but you don't have as much of an economic versus economic advantage, that's when you have to attack. And here we see that I'm easily winning the muta battle and forcing him to GG. It seems like maybe kind of a premature ending. However, when you win a muta battle like that, there's no coming back from that, and he knew that was the end of it, so he was forced out of the game.
So that was passive muta versus muta ZvZ. This has been a Razer Academy replay analysis. Thank you for watching.